welcome to yet another episode of The Next 100, the podcast that focuses on emerging sectors and industries in Nigeria that have the potential to do $100 million in annual recurring revenue a year within the next 10 years. So far, we've had some very, very fantastic guests, and we've spoken to a lot of interesting people in doing interesting things. And today we have none other than my partner in crime, Ojie Imoloame.
Hi, Malare.
Yeah, and I remain following Bitire. So today we're going to be talking a bit about real estate and tourism. So when we think of Nigeria, and we understand that tourism is an undertapped area within our economy. And when you think about the cultural diversity, you think about the history and everything, and just how vibrant Nigeria is as a country, right? Like, it's clear, and even our landscape and whatnot, it's clear that we're probably not selling our tourism as well as we ought to, and we're probably underperforming in that area. Yeah. But in recent times, we've seen a resurgence of a lot of tourism in Nigeria, and what we're going to be talking about today, and what Ojie is going to be giving us some insights on, is how we can get from where we are. He's going to describe where we are today, and then how we can get from where we are to $100 million in annual recurring revenue in 10 years. So Ojie, do you want to give an introduction, because people may not really know your history?
Hi, my name is Ojie. How's everyone doing? So I work in two sectors in Nigeria. I work in real estate, and I also work in the entertainment sector as well. So
hence tourism.
So I always say, entertainment, hospitality, real estate, and tourism are all brother and sister. I mean, everything is built around real estate, obviously, but entertainment, hospitality, and real estate. Entertainment, hospitality, and tourism are all brother and sister. So where are we today? The country as an incorporated entity is only like 64 years old. In the past, in the 80s or so, there was some attempt at tourism, like Yankari Games Reserve, for instance. That was built a long time ago, amongst others. However, unfortunately, the tourism dwindled.
Shout out to Uncle Latia Buloji.
Over years.
Shout out to who was the governor who did Tinapa?
Donald Duke.
Shout out to
Mr.
Donald.
Yes, in the early 2000s, there was that attempt at a resurgence with a Tinapa Resort, Obudu Cattle Ranch as well, and most especially a positioning crew. Positioning Cross River State, obviously Calabar, as a center of tourism with the annual Calabar Carnival. As a matter of fact, we got the report, I think in December, the government of Cross River stated they had about 300,000 guests for the carnival last year.
I read that. That's huge, by the way. Shout out to them. Shout out to them.
I remember, however, over the past couple of Decembers, we've had this thing called Detty December. So obviously, Mr. Easy would always appreciate that.
Shout out to Home Science.
That we ascribe like Detty December to him because he coined the term. I think in 2017. So if you think about it, the resurgence of that, I think, was driven by a couple of factors. So in the first instance, Afrobeats, the culture was going to the world, and I think the culture was led strongly by the current crop of Afrobeat musicians going to the world, having signing a global deal in 2015. Also, again, you must also understand that digital penetration at the time in the country from 2015 thereafter was increasing, because the former director general of NCC, Dambata, when I think he gave a report of his tenure, he said when he took office in 2015, the broadband penetration in Nigeria was 5%. As of, I think, the end of his tenure.
What year was this? What year did he come in?
He came in for Buhari.
Okay, so 2015 till 2020. 3
to 2 years. Yeah. So at the end of his tenure, I think it was under 50%.
Wow, from 5 to 50.
Yeah. So they did a lot of work in that. So if you think about it, on one hand, the culture is going to the world. And then on the second hand, the world now has visibility over Nigeria via what? Social media. So you marry the both of them together, you get it to December. So for the first time, I won't say for the first time, however, the power of showcasing your version of Nigeria is now in your hands.
Fantastic.
So it isn't in the hands of anybody else but you. So I can take my camera to the places of Nigeria I feel are very lovely, and I point a camera to that place and say, see, this is my environment. This is a nice restaurant. This is a nice shop. This is a nice bookstore. This is a nice lake, a nice river, all sorts of things. So along that time, there was a lot of visibility on Nigeria. Obviously, again, you must also give credence to the travel bloggers. So the Stephen Dukus and the Tainos, amongst others, who took their cameras and lit up the cameras across Africa. But they started with Nigeria, traveling around Nigeria and showcasing the beauty of Nigeria. And here we are today.
Shout out to them.
So I think as of 2023, the then minister of, and then also again we need to shout out the current administration, led by our president Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which is because this is the first administration to create a ministry of tourism and a ministry of the creative economy. It means arts, culture, and creative economy. Before it was all lumped in onto tourism, arts and culture, information, and national orientation all in one. However, he stripped that out. So today, you now have a dedicated and focused ministry for tourism, arts and culture, and the creative economy.
Sorry. I think you've said a lot of very important things, and I just want to reiterate the thing you said about broadband.
Yes,
I think it was
game changing
because if you think about it, there's been this narrative that people in the West see us as kids in underwear that are raggedy with flies on our faces.
I know.
And there's that image that a lot of people ascribe to people in Africa. I like you scroll on I mean, you know how social media can be. So, there are people that just don't know. But like, because we have a young, upwardly mobile population,
correct,
something like 70% of Nigerians in Nigeria are said to be under 30 years old.
Correct.
And like 44% are said to be under 15 years old.
And highly digitally
savvy. Even across like socioeconomic classes as well.
Yes.
Or across
even a vulcanizer has WhatsApp.
Across
a vulcanizer has Instagram, yeah.
And I think it's very, very, very important because now we have the ball in our court and we are the ones that would tell our own stories. Correct. So it's very crucial
from your perspective,
from our perspective.
So it's always a very interesting thing to point out in storytelling. So it is always called produced by, directed by, written by, and what does that mean? Is from that person's perspective. So it isn't necessarily the truth. Because it's from the way I see it. Exactly. It's very important to highlight that.
It's powerful. It's really powerful. And the rapid growth in broadband penetration has definitely led to this. But then also the adoption of digital technologies, the proliferation of mobile phones, and everything mobile, really, mobile apps, mobile short form video, all these things kind of connived, let's say, to kind of
build a tourism sector in Nigeria,
to make Detty December something like I remember in December, like you just had people just pulling up.
I know
somebody would just be like, they pulled up. Why? Because they were on Instagram and they saw that XYZ person was in the club or XYZ person was doing this, and then they just said, you know what? How can we get to Nigeria? And I think the security as well. Like I did not, it's possible that maybe they might have been, but I did not hear of any situation where anybody who came from wherever they came from said, this thing happened to me while I was in Lagos, or that thing happened like security wise.
I think
that's powerful.
The government is beginning to see the opportunity in the space, and I think the government is actively supporting the space, and which is because tourism is a major like revenue driver for most of the countries of the world. So Morocco just released her figures, and they said for last year they did about $11 billion.
So, sorry. I think we need to rewind that. So how much did they do?
$11 billion.
Not Cephal. Not
dollars.
In what?
In 1 year.
Ojie, do you realize that is our national budget as a country is about $30 billion?
So it's times 3 of that.
So it's just a third.
Imagine.
And that's what they did on tourism.
Alone. In income. It's not output, GDP. Income. Money coming in. Again, if you think about the economy of tourism, it touches everyone. And let me explain. So I buy a ticket to come into your country.
Airline.
The airline is making money, and the government too.
And everybody that's serving the airline.
Good.
And everybody is serving the airline.
Exactly. So basically, I buy a ticket into your country. The airline is making money. I come into the country. I'm not going to walk. I'm going to enter a car. Whoever is running the car service
and the person selling the petrol for the car,
correct, has also made money too.
Whatever. Yeah.
I'm going to stay somewhere. Either I'm staying in a hotel. I'm staying in a shortlet. The owners of this hospitality establishment are going to make money. And then I'm going to explore. So if I'm getting a tour guide, I'm going to pay the tour guide. If I'm going to, so the transportation, going to make money.
Yeah.
If I'm going to where, and obviously again, in terms of tourism, so what people must always understand about tourism is that if I come into a new environment, I am a tourist. If I leave Lagos now to Edo State, as far as I didn't grow up in Edo State, I don't live in it. I'm a tourist there. So basically, as soon as I come down from the flight or the bus or the car, my eyes already are walking. Wow. I'm looking at the people, I'm looking at the food, I'm smelling something different. I'm new to the environment and I want to experience the environment. So what then happens? I want to try the food. Whoever's going to make the food is going to make money. I love the clothes. I love the Nigerian attire. I'm going to buy one. I will buy adire. I will buy Ankara. I will buy dashiki. Whoever is selling that is going to make money. Yeah. The music, God, I want to listen to your music. I want to dance like you. Good to make money. And also, I want to explore you. I want to understand your environment.
Museums.
So I want to go to your museums. I want to go to your heritage theater, cinema. Yeah. All these things are making money. So that is, so when you talk of tourism, is very comprehensive. It's very consolidated. It touches every single person.
Okay, so where are we right now? What's the size? I mean, I know that some folks did some estimations and they had some numbers, but obviously we don't know how they did that, and we don't know how reliable those numbers would be. So obviously we cannot just go about quoting numbers.
I mean, I've seen a lot of numbers online. Billion here, billion there, billion everywhere.
Yeah, but what are the official numbers? At least I know that from 2023 we had some numbers. So what were the numbers?
So the minister released, the then minister of tourism said in 2023 we had 1.2 million visitors in the country.
And how much did that add to the economy?
I'm not sure that was released. If it was, I may need to recheck. But I remember the headline of 1.2 million visitors.
Because the unofficial reports that we saw, they said something like 500,000 people came into the country, and they spent something like in excess of 100 billion or something like that. But again, we don't know how these numbers were generated. But let's even say that they spent, that amount. Let's even say that is what happened. Right now, it seems like there's a gap in capturing the data. I'm sure the government probably has some way, like a good proxy for this. From my data brain is to use VAT, but then not everyone pays VAT. Not everyone remits VAT, so it probably won't capture everything. But if you use VAT and you say, okay, the VAT increased 20%, then spending probably increased 20%. You know, but the guy who is a driver, who is picking people from the airport, does he remit VAT? Maybe not. If he doesn't remit VAT, then he doesn't make up that amount. So
I'm sorry, let me read it out for you. So the minister emphasized that tourism contributed 3.65% to Nigeria's GDP 2022. So $17.3 billion.
Wow.
In contribution. Not income. Contribution.
Okay.
In 2022, contribution. And the sector currently employs 1.91 million people annually, potential to grow further.
Wow.
This was 2022. Amazing. So it's important to highlight contribution, not income.
So what do you mean? What's the difference between those two?
Contribution can be more like activities, I guess. But I'm not sure if that is the income that was paid by the visitors. So how do you capture that? That's the question. But officially, so what we saw here was like 1.2 million visitors. So for me, the question is now, okay, how can we grow from 1.2 million visitors to 3 million to 5 million? So if you look at the largest tourism centers in Africa, which is Morocco, South Africa, Egypt, each is doing minimum of 10 million visitors a year.
Wow.
Obviously, those tourist centers are well-oiled machines. They are very advanced. They have a lot of experience. So we are really just starting that. So, and I personally think it's done really, really well on its own using social media, no less. So how can we now be more intentional to do from 1.2 million to 3 million to 5 million? So basically, how can you say, okay, within the next decade, how can we end up at maybe realistically 5 or 6 or 7 million visitors a year? How can it be an all year round activity, not only December?
Not just a Detty December.
Exactly.
Phenomenon.
So a lot of people will say infrastructure and all of that, which is very true. However, I will start by reminding people that, okay, how did it happen in the first place? It was awareness. It was promotion. It was media. So how can we have an intentional media effort to showcase the beauty of Nigeria
in our movies, in our music,
exactly,
and everything?
Exactly. And again, you must also recall that even if they published that 1.2 million visitors came to Nigeria, you were another chunk of that came to Lagos. However, how can we make the tourism conversation a Nigerian conversation
as opposed to concentrating
into Lagos? Because if you think about it, Abuja has fabulous infrastructure. Abuja has a hiking culture. So basically on Saturdays, people leave their homes to go and hike in the mountains or the hills in Abuja. Abuja has the Jabi Lake, and Abuja is Nigeria's capital. So because of that, it is also the center of power of Nigeria. It has a lot of Nigeria's beautiful structures. The National Mosque, the National Church has a beautiful museum of Nigeria's history. There's so much in Abuja. You also have Uyo. Uyo is a beautiful city. I think Eket, according to what I read in a while back, Eket has the longest coastline, I think, in West Africa.
Wow.
So there's a huge tourism potential in Uyo as well. Yeah. And then also Benin.
I mean, even Ondo.
Exactly.
I think every single state has at least 5 things that they can use to drag at least 100,000.
And if you also look at UNESCO heritage sites, which ones? There are 2 in Nigeria, one in Minna and one in Oshogbo. The Oshogbo and the one in Minna. Yeah. So, and then in Enugu you have the caves, which are so beautiful. And then in Taraba, you have those mountains.
Like one of the places, like there's a guy called Fuad. Fuad, he did this thing called 80 days around Nigeria, something like that.
Okay.
And basically went around Nigeria in like 80 days or something.
Oh my God.
And I think at the time it was, I don't know the guy obviously, but I know of him because I was following it like religiously.
Okay.
And he went to a place called Gimbu. He was on another podcast and he was talking about it. And The place is called Gembu. Gembu is in Taraba State. It's in that Mambila Plateau area. So Gembu, like if you see the pictures, stunning.
Is it like a coffee producing?
They produce coffee, teas, and it's like one of these windy roads that go around the mountain. Yes. It doesn't. It looks like a different country.
Yeah,
like entirely.
Yeah,
like, and I always wanted to go there, but the problem with the only reason why I've not gone there today, right, is security, insecurity. So I guess what I'm saying now, like I'm trying to pivot the conversation. So the conversation now is around, okay, what do we need to get to that 100M or maybe 10 million cost tourists or whatever the number would be. So what are the things required? Because off the top of my head, I can mention security, and that's obviously the role of the government.
Correct.
But then in terms of infrastructure, housing, like accommodations, what needs to happen?
Well, I mean, so in terms of the accommodation conversation, that is basically just incentives. So if the government has incentives to like invest in hotels, incentive to like invest in hotel apartments, that could help.
I mean, I would be very careful because I don't want a situation where I personally think NCorps, I call them NCorps, that's the Nigerian National that. I don't think those kinds of institutions are sustainable. I think I find that public-private partnerships are better. Or
that's what I'm saying.
Or, okay, you're saying public-private partnerships.
So what I'm saying is that like incentivize investments. So basically to say, if you want to build policies. If you want to build a hotel, blah 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 blah. If you want to build a hotel closer to a heritage site, you can get a 5-year like tax rebate. Something like that. So and then if the hotel is running, you can get some deals of the government. So it's more like incentivization. So security, yes, they're using the policies. Policies are always good to stimulate investment in the sector. However, I'll also say you have to drive the awareness. So if you're watching CNN, a lot of the time you see the adverts of different Asian countries and other countries. So you have to drive that awareness.
So we're coming to a close now because the producers are telling us that we're out of time, and it's been a fantastic conversation, and I think this is a conversation that we could be here all day speaking about, because I think there's so much value to be captured in this sector.
I would end by telling our audience that, you know what, if you live in our wonderful country of Nigeria, challenge yourself, go somewhere new, even if it's a museum that you've never been to a museum before. In fact, in Lagos alone, you have multiple museums. In fact, the Lagos Island alone is a cultural district. You have Onikon House, you have the National Museum, you have the fabulous J.K. Randall House, you have Freedom Park. So Freedom Park historically used to be Her Majesty's Prison. So you have Freedom Park, you have Glover Memorial Hall, that's a 100-year-old building, and you have a lot of buildings that are older than Nigeria that can trace it back to pre-colonization.
Wow.
So I would implore anyone that, you know what, if you haven't been to a museum in Nigeria, go to one. So if you live in Lagos, you live in Benin, you live in Calabar, you live in Port Harcourt, anywhere you are, locate your nearest museum and go to one. And then also allocate, do something interesting.
Like go somewhere new, go to another state.
Yeah, or do a surfing. So in Takwa Bay, they do surfing. Do that. You know?
I mean, I think a lot of Nigerians are like,
you take the classes first before you take this off. You know, do something interesting. You know, do something interesting. Explore your state. You know, if you haven't, so in Lagos State again, you have the Blue Line. Haven't even been on the Blue Line or the Red Line? Do something interesting. Or like Abeokuta. Are you aware that if you leave your house in Lagos and go to Abeokuta, if you take the first train from Lagos to Abeokuta, you can be back in your house at 8 p.m. So you can actually do a vacation in Abeokuta. You can go to Olumorok, you can go to Adire Mall, you can go to the library, and you can go to Fumilayo Ransom Kuti's home, which has been turned into a museum. So if you live in Benin now, you can go to the Benin Museum, museum and beautiful museum, and behind the Benin Museum, you have Igun Street. So remember the issues of the artifacts and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, a lot of those artifacts are still producing in Igun Street. And also in Benin, they also have a zoo. So I remember going to that a Benin zoo, and I saw a lion having lunch, proper lunch. And the lion was happy. So I would implore everyone, explore Nigeria today. It's really beautiful.
That's for everyone.
Everyone
in Nigeria, out of Nigeria.
Yes. Or in Abuja, if you're in Abuja, you ask any hike person, go on a hike in Abuja.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. And when you're done with that, you go and have fish in Mami Market.
Yeah.
Very cheap and it's very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks for coming. Invest in Nigeria, buy Nigeria, explore Nigeria, come to Nigeria, and like this, comment, share. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about tourism in Nigeria? Are you participating? What would you need to participate? Join us on this journey. And I've been Folari, and I'm still Ojie. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And that's all we have for today. Thank you. That's a wrap. Peace.